And then you have to turn that on.
Where's Sophie's 4 and Ty is gonna be 6 in a couple.
Yeah. So you're just recording. Okay, so.
Ray, yeah, Ray loves being home alone. Wait till December.
She's got a certain
She gets
subject.
home all the time. We'll be two.
Oh, okay. Then we just talked to the next time.
Ray's birthday is December 20th.
It's 58 now, so. Call it on your time. You said the thought. Okay.
That's my bad.
Well, you can
David says I can't afford the strap. The internet.
Okay, welcome. Appreciate everybody coming on such a nice day. I know you'd all rather be outside. But, anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on OGS for those. How many are new to our meetings and stuff? Oh, excellent. So, I have one of my viewers. We talk about you all the time. So, and then Brad McLaren will get up and give a talk about what he's done with photography and photos and refurbishing photos and helping family historians maintain the picture archives and things like that. So, anyway, we're Essex County. We're the branch of the Ontario Genealogical Society, and there's 30 branches and 4 special interest groups like the Irish groups and Scottish and British Home Childs, and I forgot the last one.
Irish Powhatan.
Yes. Bernardo? Children.
The home
Oh,
child,
the home,
British home child.
British Home Children.
He said that one.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, this is okay. Yes, we're recording the meetings, so if you have questions later on, you may be in the audio portion. Brad, I assume that you'd be okay with us recording that and actually mention.
Does it get sent to the RCMP?
They have your prints. Yeah. We'll talk later. So I've already mentioned that we're basically a branch of the Ontario Genealogical Society. We've got websites, we've got Facebook sites, we have Twitter, which we don't use too much, and LinkedIn we have, but we don't use that much. But those are our 2 main things. We have a website and a Facebook group. And also, if you remember, there is a members-only section where we have things that our librarian has been scanning feverishly all summer long up in the trailer. So, but anyway, those are things we have. Just some updates. Pat, our cemetery chairperson, has been out at the cemeteries with Betty and Maureen transcribing headstones all summer, and they've continued to get various sections done. And transcribing, they have to type them all. Anyone interested in typing or going out and having fun up the cemetery? Yeah, we have fun. Take our shovels and everything. So, we take our cameras, we're taking pictures now. We're going to be uploading pictures of headstones, hopefully. That's a bit more work. But, yeah, anyone interested? We do. It is actually kind of fun. So, see Pat or myself and get you hooked up. But anyway, Betty and Maureen have been putting many hours, as Pat has as well. So, and I've just started to help out with them. So, it's been, luckily, it's been good weather. So, that's been nice. Yeah, the brand scanning. As I mentioned, Linda's been scanning a lot. We've continued to put things up on the website. We'll have a lot more this fall. We've got them ready to upload, but just haven't got around to finalizing that. So any members on the members only continue to check that and see all the good things we're doing. And if you're interested, you can help out. We're a team group, so there's always things to do. Again, it's kind of fun. Right now, we're looking for more people to help out doing programs, like approaching people like Brad and saying, "Hey, Brad, are you interested in coming and giving a presentation?" And that's what they expect. And following up with Brad with the whip to make sure it gets things done. So,
I said no before today.
we had Jimmy asking, right?
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. So, but yeah, we again, it's not a lot of work. It's just you may know people that we could be great guest speakers, and that's really about the extent of it. And just help us out with that. So, or get up and introduce your friends and talk to them. So. Oh, our next meeting won't be here. It's going to be in Kingsville. Anybody with the Kingsville group? Anyway, we're going to have a road trip, basically. Going there, and they're going to tell us about their operations and what kind of research. If you have any heritage down in that area, that would be a good opportunity to go, and they'll explain what they do, what they've got. And we're going to try to organize maybe carpooling as well. We've done that before when we went to Condom last year, I think that was. So keep in touch. We'll probably email you that around to help everyone out. So.
Michelle just dropped off flyers for the Kingsville meeting.
Oh,
so
excellent.
At the desk, if anyone wants to
Terrific.
take one.
Okay. Before I get to Brad, we have the flyers for next week's or next month's meeting, and also in the back we're unloading everything's going digital, so a lot of things are digital, but it's sometimes nice to have a hard copy. So we have hard copies of some of the census from 1891, Tilbury and Anderton. We have a lot of those. So if you have any relatives in that area back at that time period, feel free to pick up one of the census on your way out. I don't know about you, but I still like to read a hard copy of things, or at least have them on hand. So sometimes the internet goes down. So anyway, they're there if you like them. I think Cindy's trying to unload things in her basement. So that's another thing with volunteers. I got a lot of stuff. If you've got a big basement, I can fill it out. So, okay, so and these are posted, I believe,
On the Facebook, they're on the website.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So if they need the address. Okay. Brad McLaren, I've known for many years. He was taking photos there and everything else. It was always nice to go into a shop on Tecumseh and Hartwood. Is that okay? Just near high school or
John Campbell.
John Campbell High
Right
School.
beside John Campbell's.
Right. So very easy to get to. Parking right beside the barber shop. So, but for years.
Oh, excuse me, I asked people if they like beer on the telephone, and they say yes, and I'll say, well, we're just kind of on an angle from the Scottish Club.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. I didn't realize that. But there's also another restaurant down the street. But anyway, that's where they're located. And I've gone in there for years, and I've been mesmerized by the way he's taken some old photos that have been around, kicking around in the attic, and he's been able to refurbish them and bring them back to life again. So I believe that's the main part of his talk today will be on the things that he can do with old photographs, which I don't know about you, but I've got tons of old albums that need help. And we have Barbara in the group that has been doing that the last little while with him. So Brad, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy,
Yes?
in help for your basement, David encouraged me to take this about 6 times. I kept putting it back, he kept
Thank you.
handing it to me.
Why do you want it? What's in it?
Well, okay. I brought along my great-grandparents, Grant, Charlie and Elizabeth Grant, and I brought them along just to show that I really do have a great interest in what you folks go through and all of your research. These grants came from up near Valletta, and most of my family then ended up in Chatham. But nevertheless, I brought along my great-grandparents for no other reason than I just like to have them with me, which is really weird. They hang up over top of my processor at work. But as David forced this book upon me, I see on page D42 or 43 my other set of great-grandparents, and their last name was Baker, and they were on in I guess Tilbury East, and my Baker side were in Tilbury West. So I'm really excited already just to be able to open this book, and I'm sure all of you people have all done this at one time or another, being excited to find a name that you recognize and part of your family. So anyway, that brings me to the point of saying thank you for inviting me, because already, and David wants me to take more books, but if I can't find my family in them, I'm not going to take them. But anyway, thank you. Thank you. There's all kinds of things going on with photography, as you know. And the number one item is, how come you're still in business? Digital has taken over and it must have ruined your business. Well, if you want to go back to 2000, 2001, when digital really kind of hit, it did. It had a big effect on our business, and people didn't know which way to go between negatives and, that's what I'm looking for. The photo industry does things in a 3-year sequence, and I'm not sure why, but they do this, I guess, maybe to see what's trending, what trends are going to take place, but they don't do things on a yearly basis. They do things on a 3-year basis. This, strangely enough, is not the number of emails that Hillary cleared from her account. And it's not the number of people that have turned against Donald Trump. Yeah. It is 2015, 2016, and 2017. For 17, there's a little bit of a projection in there. It is the number of photos that are being taken or have been taken and will be taken for that 3-year period, 15, 16, and 17. It's a staggering amount of pictures. 90% of this number is taken with a telephone. So if you go into where you used to see cameras for sale, no more. There are no little pocket cameras. We have one, if I could get a little commercial. Here comes Malcolm. We have one that's an underwater camera, which is really good. And it sells because people have a tendency to spill beer and wine and things on them. But point and shoot cameras, thanks Malcolm. These are called point and shoot. This is a Canon. It's a very sharp lens. It's a great camera. Oh, there's another one there. You can hardly find these anymore simply because of telephones. The telephones, and I don't know how many megapixels.
I don't know, and I don't care, and I don't have a telephone.
Okay,
Don't laugh at me. I don't have a telephone. I'm not smart enough.
I won't be calling you then. But the new Samsung is 16 megs, just in a telephone itself. So it's a staggering amount of photos, and it's a staggering amount of telephone pictures. Now the new thing is they call it phonography, because they're taken with telephones. This happens to be from a iPhone 5. And the quality is unbelievable. It's just spectacular. And for the people who really want to blow something up, you can do it from your iPhone, or you can certainly do it from a Samsung if they don't blow up first, the Samsungs. They have a tendency to do that. But nevertheless, you can get a great photo from a telephone. And this is not the new one. The new one is probably double or triple the megapixels of this camera. So it's just amazing. So I thought what I would do is I would start at the beginning and kind of work our way back a little bit. The one thing that I know that you folks are certainly concerned about is the conservancy, the life of your photos when you're putting them into albums or putting them into sleeves or boxes or whatever it is you're putting them into. So I brought along some samples because the industry is changing and no one knows this. So you folks are on the cutting edge. And I'm gonna ask you to tell me what this feels like. Because I honestly don't have a word for it. It's not the thickness, not the back, but what does that top feel like to you?
They're sticky now.
What's that?
A lot of them are sticky now.
Yeah, you've noticed that.
They're almost plasticky.
Yeah, plastic, sticky. They have a really funny feel to them.
It's passing around there.
Now, okay, I give you guys the women.
There's too many throw ones.
Oh, you get a five by side. Okay, so now I'm going to give us, oh, I didn't give you one out.
Oh, he's got.
I've got those already, was it supposed to pass it out?
Oh, you know, it's okay, it's okay.
Oh, like this.
Okay, so now here's something else for you to feel. And I won't give you guys the women.
They don't seem to leave fingerprints. They don't seem to leave fingerprints like your old books.
Yeah, this is glossy and this is, yeah, they're both glossy, so you have the same. But if you have an opinion on this and what you think that surface feels like, please tell me. Because as I say, we're having difficulty coming up with it. So, the one that feels a little bit sticky, if you flip it over, it's going to say, not too prominently, dry.
Yes.
And if you flip the other one over, it's just going to say Crystal Archive, I believe, Crystal Archive. So these are both papers from Fuji. The Crystal Archive is the paper that they have had forever. And the dry is what's coming down the road. The thing that would concern me, or does concern me, and possibly should concern you, is that the Fuji Archive, the reason they call it archive is because they pioneered a color lock system that locks that color in for 250 years. And I always tell my customers, if it ever fades up in that area, just bring it back and I'll make you a new one. Yeah. Dry photo labs, where all this sticky paper is coming from. And there's not a thing wrong with this paper in terms of color and contrast and sharpness. It's beautiful. They've really done a nice job on this paper. But this has three color layers to it: cyan, magenta, and yellow. 3 layers built into the paper. So when this goes through the age-old process of developer, fixer, wash, stabilizer, dryer, it is locked. It's in the paper. 250 years is what they will tell you. This new dry lab, even though it's very spectacular, is all on top of the paper. It's sitting on top of the paper. And I was just at Fuji because these wet labs are just about gone. The dry labs are what's popular. Everybody's buying them. Everybody's using them. I don't have one. So I went to Fuji just to see what it's all about. And 250 years, and I had to drag it with horses out of them, 75 years. And that's assuming that both of them are properly taken care of and properly stored in archival boxes and all the rest of that stuff. So, and this 250-year print is going, gone. It's really sad, but the wet process, the wet lab process is 98% gone. So what they've done is they've pioneered this Fuji with Epson. So I said to them, well, all this is just an Epson printer with a Fuji name on it. Oh, no, it's much more than that. And they really didn't have a way of explaining it. They really didn't, other than, they didn't even want to tell me that it was Epson. But they, Fuji and Epson have had a partnership, a relationship for many years. And Fuji has always sold the wide-body 2-foot, 4-foot Epson printers. Fuji has sold those for Epson. So I've always known about this background partnership that they've had. So I said to them, oh, I bet you this is a Fuji printer. I'm sorry, I bet you this is an Epson printer. And there were 3 of them standing there, 2 technicians and a salesman, and they all just looked at each other like, okay, what do we tell this guy now? So it's an Epson printer with a Fuji sticker on it and probably marked up double, who knows. But anyway, I think it's important that from a life expectancy to know that these wet labs are gone. Like I said, 98%. I said to them, who do you sell these? Do you sell these wet labs? Oh, yes, we do. Who do you sell these wet labs to? We only sell these to people like the Maid of the Mist company at Niagara Falls, where they are making thousands and thousands of these a day. So what they've done is they've figured out a way to eliminate all the chemicals. So they'll say to you, well, why don't you go dry, because you're going to save all this money with chemicals. We're no longer going to have to need a developer and a bleach and a fixer and a solution and a stabilizer and all the rest of this stuff. And in the process, they've made these prints 40% more expensive than these. So it's like, welcome. I always say, welcome to Mississauga, welcome to Toronto, because they do things so much differently. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that because I know you folks are all concerned about the longevity of your photos and what to do with them and where to store them and who to pass them down to.
Well, so these will barely make it to your great-grandchildren, and these will make it to your great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren.
Well,
Like that many more generations. 75 as opposed to 250.
yeah, this is really disappointing for me to have to admit this. I'm not going to have any great-grandchildren. I'm not even going to have any grandchildren.
You're sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that put a hush in the room, didn't it?
Well, I don't know that yet.
No, I have 2 wonderful daughters, and they are not at all interested in children.
Yeah.
So, and I forgot to tell you this right at the very beginning. Please interrupt me with your questions.
I'm just wondering, like, nowadays, not very many people even print their photographs. They're all on the computer, and if you want to look at the pictures, you got to go find the computer and find them where they are. So the few that we do print, though, we just get paper from Staples or Best Buy or wherever Kmart.
Oh, you're talking about home printing now?
No, you're not going to get, yeah, home printing.
Okay,
You're not going to get this kind of paper there, right?
you are not. That's correct. Your life expectancy at home, maybe 20 years for a home print. That's the one thing that we've got sort of going for us, is that even though the life expectancy here has been cut drastically from wet to dry, it's still 3-4 times longer than anything you print at home. And I'm going to go right out of the edge of the limb here and say to you, I don't believe that you can get this really dynamite quality at home. It's all in the eye of the beholder, I'm sure. And that brings me to a good point, that out of that 4.3 trillion, which is a number that's even beyond me, the industry, once again, has determined 3.5% of those will be printed. So from a photo lab standpoint, to try to monetize a customer, if I could say it that way, being delicate, to try to monetize a customer, we just have to come up with all kinds of innovative projects to get them to hook up their phone and hook up their iPad and take the card out of their camera and make some prints. And one of those things, I'll just briefly touch on that, is that we have 2 kiosks at work, and you can connect your telephone and your iPad and your laptop right into the side. Well, the company that supports that software for that has just introduced Bluetooth, so all you need to do is stand beside the kiosk now, and your photos will drop right in, and you can then edit them for printing. So, yes, sir.
Brad, on the topic of longevity, looking at the pictures on the screen are comparable with pictures that most of us have in our files. What was the life expectancy for things that were printed, say, in First World War, Second World War, that are now fading, obviously?
Those are the best prints that were ever made. They were simple, developer, fixer, and a stabilizer. They were simple as can be. They were probably done in a tray by somebody's yellowed hands, and they will last probably 300-400 years if they're properly taken care of. Now, you've probably all seen a black and white photo, and when you turn it to the light, it has a little bit of a haze and a glare to it. Well, that's a black and white photo that was done back then, but not properly fixed, and not fixed long enough, and also may not have been rinsed long enough. So it's oxidizing, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you've got one that isn't oxidized, that was done properly, forever and ever, a lot longer than any of us will ever have to worry about. Yeah, that's my uncle, and half of my dad. Just real quickly, while we're on the topic of really spectacular, these are all, once again, dry photos from Fuji, and they're not. I said to them, if you're going to give me samples, do not give me those samples that were all done by professional photographers and nobody else in the world can take these pictures. So, believe it or not, these pictures were all taken by the salesman who's trying to desperately sell me this piece of equipment. I've put him off now a year. So, but nevertheless, there is absolutely no quality loss. The quality is just spectacular, whether it be the luster paper or the glossy paper. And I'm not here to do a commercial for Fuji, but they have really done a very spectacular job in being able to give people a great photo. And the black and white, which I don't have in an 8x10, but the black and white or sepia is just as spectacular. And I personally love the sepia, which I don't have a sample of, but even the black and white coming out of this new dry lab is very nice. So anyway, I don't mean to belabor that issue. I just wanted you to make sure that I told you about what is happening down the road. And it's not very far down the road. Maybe London. Maybe London. Actually, we are just quickly, we have a wet lab, as you have well determined by now. And it's 12 years old. And I just had to have the Fuji guy there for the very first time to repair it. So, my opinion is that Fuji makes a very fine piece of equipment, and so will this be, even though they're kind of co-partnering with Epson on it. They make great equipment. So we covered the telephone, and we covered the longevity problem that exists. And the next thing I just wanted to touch on real briefly is how many people use Photoshop? Does anyone use Photoshop? Okay. And I don't know, maybe this isn't even a concern for you, but it would be for me to be able to keep some kind of a file. I don't know now, do you use labels on the back of your photos? Now do you write down born and died and married and kids and all that stuff on photos, or how do you do it?
On older photos that I've gotten a hold of or whatever, I write on the back.
Yeah.
The ones that I do now, I name them in my computer, and usually when you get them developed, that information comes on, especially the date.
Yeah, you can, your file name can be very long. You may not, it may not all print out, but you can get away with at least a 50-character file name. And it's gonna put them in rows, but nevertheless, that's one way to do it. The other way is if you're using Photoshop, you can go into File Info, and we had to have a photo up on the screen to do this screenshot, so we used my uncle, my dad, and you drop down in File and go to File Info, and then the next slide, if I can figure out how to do this properly, gives you a page where you can put in as much as you want with all kinds of information, the title of the picture, and oh, there's my dad. Title of the picture, and then down in here, a description. There's no limit to how much you can put in there, and then that stays right with each photo.
The properties.
Yeah, but it's an Adobe feature, so it's Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe InDesign, and all three of those programs will allow you to go in and put this metadata in, and it stays right with the photo. And my research indicates that you can see here copyright status and copyright notice and copyright info. If you were to copyright that photo, it's illegal to remove any of that data because it's been copyrighted. So that's, I didn't know how you folks normally kept track of all of the information. But if you don't have Photoshop and you don't have any other of the Adobe programs, your file name can, if you were to make up a little code or something for your file name, you could make that work also. But if you had a long description and you wanted to put all kinds of dates and kids' names and all kinds of stuff, then this would be the way to go. And I talked to somebody today who said that he was positive on the home edition of Adobe Photoshop. This feature is there also on the home edition.
Excuse me, Brad, some of us still do write on the back of the photographs, and you had indicated how to do that to me. Which kind of pen would you suggest for that?
Oh my goodness. I know
A pencil.
A pencil.
Yeah.
I know that there's, some archival pens.
Right.
Uniball,
I think so, yeah.
does anybody use an archival pen? Is it Uniball? Yeah,
There's a couple of brands, but yeah.
yeah, and you can get, I think Staples, maybe?
Staples should have them. I mean,
Staples, yeah, I got one.
most, I'm a scrapbooker, so most scrapbooking stores have them.
I got one, but that's why I'm bringing it up for everybody else if they're interested.
Also, there's a company called VizTech out of Toronto, and they originally were a wholesale photo company, but they've now dropped the wholesale business and gone, and they're on the web, on the net, VizTech, and they have a tremendous amount of archival stuff. If you're having any trouble with albums and pages and boxes and pens and labels and paper, VizTech. It's amazing how much archival stuff they've got. I just always tell people to be very careful with archival, because if it's archival made in China, who knows what's in it, you know? Okay, so, I brought along just a few photos here other than my great-grandparents. I brought along just a few photos to kind of demonstrate a little bit about what we do. And this particular photo obviously is the original. And a nice gentleman in what looks like a McLaren Tartan. What do you think, Malcolm?
Okay,
Or is that a camera?
it's not a Campbell chart.
Camera. Anyway, this is typical of what we do, and we do a lot of this. In this particular case, the customer did not, and we were just working on this today, the customer did not want even the 707, which have no idea what it means. He did not want any of that taken out. We can very quickly, very easily retouch these. You'll see that in just a couple of minutes. We can very easily and very quickly retouch these for a charge, of course. But in this particular case, this customer said to me on Saturday, that's what makes it old. So there's different ways of looking at things. They seem to feel that that was all part of the story, the rips and the tears. So, and then here's the new one. And because of the very unusual shape of this one, we had to do 8 by 12, but that's the finished product there now, with the tears and the breaks. And a little touch of sepia. When we see them yellow and we see them a little bit green from over time, if the customer doesn't want to switch this back to a full black and white, then we say to the customer, okay, let's try to keep the tone, although we're not going to be able to, I just said that today, we're not going to be able to guarantee that tone, but you're going to like what we do. And so we take this and we put a little bit of sepia, a little bit of warmth in it, and people really like them when they're warmer.
I noticed the other one, the old one is what, a matte finish or a very plain one?
Yep,
And reproduction has got a bit of a gloss or semi-gloss.
yep.
What's recommended when you reproduce those old pictures, or is it just a personal choice?
Well, with us, there is no choice.
Okay.
Yes, you're right, this is a flat mat. And this now is even a grade higher than the wet lab paper that I showed you. This has actually got Fuji in gold. So this is the Supreme paper. And actually it was called, oh, it still is, Supreme. Crystal Archive, once again, they build heavily on that word archive, Supreme. And this is what's called a luster. It's a halfway between glossy and halfway between matte. And in today's world, this flat mat, and I always call it like a chalkboard mat, we cannot give this away. People do not want this flat map. I don't know why, for some strange reason. And when they're getting something done like this, they do not absolutely want glossy paper. So this is a nice map. I gave you some of them as samples. It's a halfway between. I'm just going to hold up some stuff that I brought along here before I get to the slides, and I'm sure you guys are going to be wanting to do this.
Can you show the camera once in a while too?
You guys are going to want to be cutting me off soon.
No, it's okay.
But every photo is different. Every photo has a different story, as you all know. And every day, it's a delight for me to see these photos. And in this particular case, this customer does want to have this all corrected. She wants to leave in a 3/8 inch border around so that when it's framed, it'll be like a mat. And once again, this has a little tiny bit of green yellow to it. And you know what that's from? That's from cigarette and cigar and pipe smoke over the years in the house. And so once again, when we print this, we'll just put a little touch of warmth into it, and it'll be more sepia. But what amazes me about these photos is that the very special day that this must have been for these people. All dressed up, we're having our photo. It would be just the biggest day, probably the biggest event of the year to have this done. And they're pretty well off, and you can usually tell that by whether the people are wearing ties and whether the women have got a little bit of jewelry and this nice painted background. I love these. I could talk about these old photos forever. I just love them. And every one is so much different than the other. What else have we got here? We covered the telephone. Maybe I'll do just a couple of slides here. Befores and afters. And David showed me, I got a little pointer here. This girl, gone. This boyfriend, eliminated. Oh, actually, I should correct
was his dog.
He was a fiance, so he was even getting closer before he got eliminated. So, yeah, they're gone. And this little girl, for some strange reason, wasn't part of the family, but ran and got in the photo, and they didn't know what to do, how to get her out. So we have two, and you're going to see some more here, very, very talented Photoshop. I call them wizards, and I call them artists, because you have to be able to do some of this stuff. These are longtime neighbors, John and Mary Jurak from the luggage shop right next door to us. And they're no longer there. They're retired, but nevertheless, they knew where to come when they had unwanted people in their photos. Here they are again, same thing, eliminated, evaporated, and I think that's it, yeah.
And you know who the upper right-hand picture is?
I sure do know who that upper right-hand guy is, and that's his wife. Malcolm used to work with that gentleman at CBC. Yeah, I don't know, but it was very bitter. I don't know what all happened, but it was very, and they said, we can't even look at this picture with this guy in there. So, this is really quite something. This is a gentleman by the name of Godin. And here, this is him right here. He was the principal at La Jeunesse, and he's now retired. This is his sister. They're all from New Brunswick, except him. This is his sister, David. This is the greatest thing ever. I didn't know how I was going to do this. It's the greatest thing ever. This is his sister who passed away, unfortunately, very young. So what we did was we took her out of there. Monsieur Gaudin gave us this photo of all the brothers and sisters, and we put her in over here. Flipped her over so she's facing the other way, and put her in. And Monsieur Gaudin ordered 7 or 8 8x10s and cried at the counter. And we keep a box of Kleenex there for this reason.
Don't get paid, your work is more than minimum wage.
Yep. And here we go on to page 2 of the Gaudin family, which is even more interesting. So we took the photo where we inserted the sister, and he brought us a photo of his dad and his mom, and he told us the most interesting story. This is his brother, Clarence, and his dad hollered at him and said, "Put that chicken down. You're going to have your picture taken." He said, "No, this is my chicken. This is how I want my picture taken." Just like that. And he drowned in the river the following day.
The boy, not the chicken.
The boy, not the chicken. So that's the only picture they've got of him. And I said, well, with a lot of work, we could retouch that chicken out of there. And he said, no, that's part of the story. It has to stay in. So what we did was we built an 8x10. We moved the family photo over. We put the parents in ovals at the top, and we put the boy with the chicken, Clarence, in the middle. And then he really cried. Oh my goodness. He is a very sensitive gentleman. And when he saw this, he never thought anything like this would even be possible. He just came in, he brought in all the photos, and he said, here, do something with them that I'm going to like. So, and for us, he ordered another 8x10. So that was good. And he was so unbelievably happy. And that's what it's all about. If we can make some memories. I mean, we created that entire memory right there. Here, this is strange. The mother and the father did not want to be in the family photo. So you can see how every day something different happens. And I stood behind the counter waiting on this lady in disbelief. I said, you've got you took everybody away to the South Pacific or something, and you've got this beautiful photo. Why wouldn't you want to be in there? No, she says, we're too old to be with them. So, it's really difficult to know what people are thinking. But anyway, nevertheless, we pulled the parents out. And I make it sound like we just snapped our fingers. But we pulled the parents out, and then you have to keep in mind, behind where we pull them out, there's all kinds of things just left there. So we then brought them together, and as you can see, the perspective is a little narrower. And so this was a job that Stephanie did. And once again, they loved it. Young lady, gone. Pretty straightforward, but yet still a time-consuming job. And I had a gentleman say to me one day, and I'll never forget this, he said to me, $45? You gotta be kidding. And I said, no, I'm not kidding at all. He said, well, I know for a fact that all you do is hold this up in front of the computer screen, and the computer does whatever you tell it to.
Well, then you do it then. So
He actually said that to me.
well, so then you go do it.
Yeah, well, he did. He left with it. He didn't. He thought $45 was outrageous.
Charge them twice as much next time.
Baptismal certificate that was torn and ripped and broken and bent and everything else. And we put it back together. Now, I don't even know who this is.
Frank.
Bernat, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, something else that Stephanie actually did this to. A before and after where we just kind of cleaned things up a bit and put his eye back in. See his eye? Oh, I'm sorry. His eye is gone. So she put an eye in. She took this eye and flipped it over and put it back in there.
So it's still his eye.
It's still his eye, yes. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, yes, you can change his humor.
These are neighbors. These are neighbors just around the corner on Parkwood, and have been neighbors forever. This was a 2x3 wallet picture, and we got it into an 8x10 after the retouching.
A lot of resolution to blow that little one up.
Yeah, it was nice and sharp. It was really nice and sharp. But normally when people come in with a wallet picture and it's been in a wallet, this is trouble. This is real trouble. This is interesting. They never had a picture of this young lady, and it's really sad to say, but these are mostly all revolve around a death, and it's really sad. But that's all part of it. But they never had, they did not have a picture of this young lady. All of her grad photos had the hat on. There wasn't one with the hat off, and there wasn't one without the sash. And she has a grad photo of her other daughter, and so she had to have this one, but she did not want the hat. So we took the hair from her other daughter, which is identical. The lady came in after she finished crying. She said, I don't know how you did it, but her hair is exactly the way it was when she didn't have the hat.
You just took a hat off, hair was under it.
Yeah, that's it. That would be so simple. So we stole the hair from the other graduated daughter and put it on her and took the sash and the hat and got rid of it. Just a general cleanup, all kinds of spots and marks. This was, believe it or not, this was a huge job. And with all of these little marks and things that Stephanie had to work on, this was a much larger job than even I thought it was going to be. A monster job.
William and Harry.
A monster job. She had to put the hand back in, the bottom of the back. You can see that it's blown up a little bit because I said blow it up and we'll crop some of this stuff out so that we don't have to retouch it and charge the person. But down here, this is just a huge job. I think this probably took her 3 weeks. I wonder if we ever come up on the right side of these orders, you know, whether it costs us more to do them than we ever get out of them. Here we got rid of the lady, put the man's shoulder back in. Once again, he never had a dress-up photo of himself alone. I think this was a church photo. And we just cropped as tight as we could to get rid of her, and then worked up his shoulder. What Stephanie would do in a case like this is she would steal this shoulder and invert it and put it over here. And in the process of doing that, she would get rid of the hands and the lady and everything else involved. This was a wedding photo, believe it or not. And they appear to be in bliss. And the mother said, get rid of those people in the back, please. This is one of those Toronto photographers who has a whole new way of seeing, and they don't pose anybody anymore. And it's all just casual grab shots. And this is the only photo that the mother had of the bride and the groom together. So, we did what she asked.
That's the 21st century.
He's a happy guy.
Even without the cigarettes.
Yeah. So we got rid of his brother standing beside him, and we got rid of the cigarette, but we presumed that he was drinking ice water, so we were told it was okay to leave that.
Real easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that might be, oh no, this one is really, truly interesting. Now, I don't know whether this guy has 2 wives. I don't know what he had going on. But we eliminated her, used the same background, and brought her over and put a corsage on her. And we didn't have much going on down here. So we put legs and shoes on her. Well, actually, we took this shoe.
No, you just lay their legs, lay the other lady.
Yeah,
And part of the shoes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, different woman, same legs. It's pretty crazy what people ask us to do. It really, truly is. Pretty crazy.
Well, here, I've got a picture. Can you fix this one? Some old photog took this years back.
Oh, yeah?
See if you can figure out who took it, and then can you fix it?
Oh, yeah, that'd be, that looks like a Hebert shot. That looks like one of those expensive portraits.
It was an expensive portrait. I remember we had to have it done. It was that little boy's graduation, grade 8, at the Kubota Club, and this strange photographer was there offering to take pictures against his backdrop.
Yeah,
And
yeah, this guy really knew what he was doing.
it was really good.
McLaren's photo lab.
Oh, amazing, amazing. When my now 28-year-old was 13, graduating from grade school. And it needs repair. Maybe I could find a good place. It's sitting on the wall for 15 years.
Just hold it up in front of your screen at home.
Oh, thank you. Save me some money.
This is a very fine lady from Essex who became a wonderful customer, and she's a wonderful lady. Unfortunately, the gentleman in the middle here passed away, her husband, and she has 2 sons, neither of which ever had a photo with their dad and their mom. So we were almost lucky here. We took the mom and the 2 kids out and built him a shoulder. And we may have once again taken this shoulder and inverted it and then rounded it a little bit. It's truly amazing what can be done. And once again, this was like a half a box of Kleenex, this one. She just cried like crazy, this lady. So that's one son, and that's the second son. So we obviously got rid of the young lady, and we had to move him over. We had to build this whole side up from where she was covering him. So we had to build that whole side up and then move him over, and she had then a photo of her sons and her husband. Life Touch photos, if you don't order, if your child graduates and you don't order the photo from Life Touch, they'll only keep the digital image about 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe. But then they say, go ahead and get it done anywhere you want. We'll give you a letter, we'll give you a copyright permission. And all these folks do come in with the letter. And I say, well, that's very nice of you, and it's very nice of them, but you really don't need a letter because they don't have the image anyway. But nevertheless, and they are monster jobs in terms of time to get rid of all of this stuff that's put on there purposely so we can't do it. And I noticed in the back of your mind somewhere, and I haven't mentioned it yet, this is $150. This is what we charge to get rid of a Life Touch logo. Now what they're doing, just recently, they've started putting a dot pattern in, and I can't really see it, but they've started putting a dot pattern in, and there's like a million little stars. And each one of those have to be touched out one at a time. So I said, we're not trying to gouge people, but if this order takes you 4 days to do it, we've got to charge more than $150.
Would have been cheaper to buy the thing up front.
It would have been. It would have been, just to order from them. But people are shocked at their initial pricing. And then they're shocked again when they decide, well, I've got to have it. Just an oldie that we cracked and broken, and we had to tape it together to hold it together. And then Stephanie did her magic on this. Get rid of 2 kids and just have a single kid there by himself. She had to bring the curtains down to eliminate these legs and this. Whenever we take somebody out, there's just a big hole there, believe it or not. And we got to fill it in with something. This one is very special to us again. These folks all live in Ontario. They got together for a wedding. This was the sister from Italy who was very ill at the time of the wedding and couldn't come to Canada. But once she got better, she went and had her portrait done in Italy. We put her in with the family. And this is the first and only and ever time that that family has ever had the photos all together. And talk about crying going on. Oh my. And this one on Facebook. The girl that got this done is her niece, and she's probably early mid-40s, let's say. And she picked it up, and she ordered an 8x10 for everybody, and plastered it all over Facebook and everywhere about how happy she was with it. Take the people out of the background, make the man stand out more. A repair job, a serious repair job. Once again, an old Italian photo. Oh, I'm sorry. Stephanie put this whole corner in, fixed everything up, took the crack out, And I'm not trying to belabor the issue or make anything out of this, but these are big jobs that turned out amazing, just amazing. This was a picture from somebody's telephone. This was a picture from somebody's telephone of something they saw one day and thought it was nice and asked us to put it together in a 24 by 36 and then put a 5-inch mat, double mat around it, and the most expensive frame that we've got in the building, gold, it's amazing. And this was a $922 or $25 job by the time it was matted, printed and matted and framed. But Stephanie went on the internet and came up with this angel. And once again, it was a cry fest at the front counter when the daughter of this lady saw this. Notice that she took the glare out of the glasses and fixed up the eyes. David, nothing more. I did want to show you this one, folks, if I may. Oh, I got 2 other things I got to show you. Am I running late, Dick? Okay. Pat Stern. Show the camera. Sorry. I'm not used to that. Anyway, Pat Stern, a Romanian-born Windsor photographer who did the most amazing black and whites. She took your picture too?
Oh, thousands of kids. Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, good. And only in black and white. And we get Pat Stern photos coming into us to be redone. And they're as spectacular as the day that she pulled them out of the wash. There's never been 1 ounce of fading, oxidation, nothing to them. She was down on Olette Avenue when Olette Avenue was the hot place to be. And she only worked in black and white. And I brought this along, and well, actually I had this delivered to us tonight. But I think it's important because in today's world, her black and white photos were just amazing. The lighting, the simplicity, the printing, the developing, the paper, the developer, she used all of the finest stuff. And I just think that anytime I see a Pat Stern photo, I cannot stop looking at it because they are so simple, but they're so difficult to do. She took simplicity, removed all the difficulty out of simplicity, and made these photos that are just world class. This photo actually was sent to Europe in an exhibition because she herself loved it so much. So anyway, I wanted you to see that because there are a lot of black and white Pat Stern photos around. She's passed away not that long ago, but she did just a world-class job. And then, very quickly, and I think, oh, I got a whole bunch more stuff in the car I got to go get. Brand new, on the market, and I might as well do the whole commercial while I'm here. Acrylic printing. So what happens is we have our custom frame shop. We have our custom frame shop, and they're in Montreal. And they're a great company to deal with, and they're always on the edge of looking for something new. They do a lot of corporate enlargements and frames for the Toronto, Montreal corporate market. So they're always on the move and on the lookout for something new. What we would do is if this was your image, we would send them an email of that image, and it comes back to us just like this. Now, these are samples, so there is nothing on the back to hang them, but if you ordered one from us and it came back to us, it comes back with a small little frame built on the back. They call that a support, and that frame is what you would hang it with. But it's new, and I just thought I would bring it along. And then for the old black and whites, this is spectacular. Printing on aluminum. It's locked in. Both of these are locked in. No fading, no nothing. And we would, once again, send them a digital image, order an aluminum print. You can order these prints as big as that wall, any size that you want. These just happen to be 8 by 12. This would also come back with a small support frame on the back so that you can hang it, as they are now. They're kind of useless because you can't hang them up. You would just have to stand it. But as great as the black and white looks, color on the aluminum is just spectacular. It's just really something. So anyway, I brought those along just as samples, and I do believe that's a wrap.
I have a question.
Oh, you have questions? Okay. Oh, I have questions.
My grandmother gave me this roll. It's of the men and women of Heinz. We're out in front of Heinz, and the roll's about 3 feet long, but it was rolled for 40 some years. So when we slowly unrolled it, it began to crack. So we rolled it back up. Do you have any suggestions on what I could do with that, or mount it, or what?
We we have at least 3 of those in right now. They're mostly Essex, Kent Scottish, and the old company pictures that they used to take. But we just had one, the Mifflin family reunion from Chatham, believe it or not, and it was, I believe, 48 inches long. And the same thing happens every time you unroll them. So what we do is we unroll a little piece, maybe 12 or 14 inches long. We do it as gingerly as possible, but we know that there may be a crack or two, and we scan that little piece. And then we move it over and we scan the next. We try to work on it in small little sections so that there's not too much stress on the whole picture. And then once we scan them in pieces, we take them into Photoshop and put them back together. If there is a crack and a break, then we can retouch that at the same time.
Okay, great, thanks.
But we really do a lot. And when they come in, you're right, they're so rolled. And I always hate to see that because I know something's gonna happen when we try to unroll it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions as far as scanning the old pictures that are on digital? Like I have all kinds of albums that I'd like to save the pictures in the computer. And so scanning them, is there a certain resolution that's best? Because the higher the resolution, the bigger the file, and the more difficult it is to like email it to somebody or whatever.
But also the nicer the photo is if somebody wants to print it down the road. We scan, all of our old photos, we scanned at 400 dpi. And it's sufficient. You don't need to worry about, we get people that call us and say, how high does your scanner go? Oh, 24,000. Okay, well, that's what I want my pictures done at. And then I'll say to them, well, okay, but do you own a supercomputer? Do you have a computer that the rest of us haven't heard about? Nobody needs anything more than 400 dpi. On the best of days, no matter how big you're going, 400 dpi, we scan at a 48-bit depth. So we got it all covered at 400 dpi, and you can do anything with them. We make 24 by 36s, and 24 by 48s with no problem. And they're all JPEGs. For us, there's none of this raw business, and there's none of this TIFF. I mean, people bring them in TIFFs, but we 99.9% of the time use JPEGs. And everybody's concerned about JPEGs being reduced in size and then brought back up and lose, and then reduced in size again and then brought back up and lose quality. For us, that's nonsense. The JPEGs are all we need, and even if somebody brings a TIFF file to us, we transfer it to a JPEG and print it anyway. And they'll say, how did that work out with the TIFF? Great. We didn't say we used it. So anyway, that's a little bit about what's going on in the photo world. Thank you very much.
Brad, that was.
I forgot to tell you about the USBs.
Well, we could probably maybe
Oh, it's
squeeze
fine.
that in.
Excuse me, Dave, I'm sorry. But do most of you save your images on USBs? Because CDs and DVDs are on their way out.
Yes.
You can't get a laptop anymore with a CD reader in it. So anyway, I just brought this along because I was hoping that the USBs were the way you were going. And don't worry about what you call it, because people call them SUBs and SOBs and Anyway, now I'm done, Dave, I'm sorry.
No, Brett, very informative and entertaining.
Well, I hope so.
We just brought you for good looks, but,
Yeah.
anyway, I
If
appreciate
you
you.
wanted somebody for good looks, then you got it right there.
But these are all like extra cool. Anyway, a token of our appreciation.
Well, thank you very much, thank you. That's enjoyable, I love this. I love this.
Didn't mention, I remember bringing some old film in, negatives, and they were odd sizes. They weren't the 35 mils. I forget what sizes they were. He was able to do things with that as well, I believe.
Yep, all the old negatives, all the old slides, anything we can do, anything. Thank you. I'll pack up my stuff here and be gone. I told Barbara, leave your jacket on because they're gonna want to get rid of me about 5 after 7, and we'll be making a quick